So welcome everyone. Really happy to see that this webinar was interesting for you since we had 100 people that maybe are coming in the next minutes. So as you know, the webinar is about the algae data collection in Europe, and the aim is to build a reliable database. This is the third series of webinar organized by EU4Algae, and we'll be together for 2 hours. Maybe some of you, I saw some familiar faces in the camera. Already know about EU4Algae, but I'd like to start with some context first of all. So EU4Algae is an European Commission initiative promoted by DG Mare. It started with the first mandate in 2022, and it has been renewed for other 2 years until the end of 2026. And the aim is to support the growth of the algae industry. So the objective of EU4Algae is to bridge industry stakeholders with policymakers and businesses. And talking about business, it has some strategic collaborations like the Blue Invest, that it was an opportunity to scale up algae innovative technologies. And also, maybe some of you were present 2 years ago, it organized the first European Algae Awareness Summit in Paris. And I take advantage of you being here to say that the second awareness summit will be soon on the 16th and 17th of October in Berlin. And I'll give some more information at the end of the webinar about that. So EU4Algae initiative is supported by other initiatives like the European Green Deal, the Farm to Fork strategy, and all the frameworks that concern the blue economy, the sustainability, and the circular economy. In the first mandate, there were 7 working groups, and for each working group, there were different objectives, like the one on the macroalgae, microalgae production, bioremediation, etc. And you can still find online the outcomes and the reports that were published for these working groups. Today is not the case anymore, so we don't work with the working groups, but we have thematic, and you can still be active and participate in this. I put here some links and the QR code of the EU4Algae website. As I said before, try to move this. This is the third webinar organized. And EABA is in charge of this task, so about improve the algae data collection in Europe. We are at the very beginning, so just for you to know, and we started to engage discussions with the data collection offices, and our main interlocutor is Eurostat, that unfortunately is not here today, but we have integrated in today's presentation the discussion that we had with their representatives. And other organisms are the GRC, the EMONET, and the MOFA, that we have one of our speakers representing it, Alessandro Pititto. And our initial aim is to create a bridge between these organisms and the algae industry. And we have set different topics that we want to prioritize. So first, the gap in data collection due to the fact the algae are categorized under both agriculture and aquaculture. And more technically, the inconsistencies between reporting dry weight and wet weight. As you know, sometimes also in official reports, it's mentioned tons of kilos of algae, and it's not even specify dry weight and wet weight. And so this magnifies in the statistical data too. Another topic, it's about the import and export data. So we know sometimes how much an industry produces, but we don't know if these algae are produced in Europe or they are just processed there. Another big topic is about confidentiality, like to transfer the data of the production and the species produced on the official organisms. And this is another big topic that Silvio will develop more. And at the end, the nomenclature issues, in the sense that sometimes the same species is reported under 2 different names. And so we don't know the exact amount of the data collected for that specific species. And the same happens with the synonyms. What we want to do is first to gather information, how data are collected. We already started with Eurostat, and we understood that each member state has a different way of collecting data. And Eurostat has the task to collect and aggregate all of them from the member states. So the first topic will be the harmonization of the data that they are transferred. We want to provide information of algae data collection for the main European producers, and referred especially to what I say about the dry and wet weight, provide technical suggestions for the data aggregation, as well as the taxonomy. And all this information in like 2 years' time, and the end of the EU4Algae mandate, will be disseminated through a report. So yes, this is all for the introduction. I'll show you the agenda for today. So we have 5 experts in the sector. They will have different perspective because they have different experience in different member states. And we have also people representing some data collector offices and other testimonials from microalgae and seaweed perspective. And the end of the session, we will have, you can open your mic and ask whatever question you want, and we can open the floor to discussion for the last half hour. So this is everything from my side, and I'll leave the floor to Silvio Mangini. And I'll let also share your screen, Silvio, so you can manage the slides.
Thank you, Arianna. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
And I have to go in presentation mode. I hope that it works. Yes, I guess. So
all good.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to have the possibility to introduce what I am learning about data collection from a statistical point of view, but also in an industrial perspective. And so now page down doesn't work. To go to the next slide, what should I do? Sorry.
Maybe in the bottom. Sorry, at the end. In the bottom, when you move the
Not able to
on the left.
To the next slide. Not. Wow. So I try again. I'm very sorry. And let me check first in this way. Okay, now I am able, but it is not in presentation mode. And if I go here, okay, now it works. Sorry. So a bit of context about data collection and databases. Today we deal with data collection in under statistical meaning, which means that this data collection has the aim to provide authorities with data useful for economic and strategic management of the industrial data in order to orient the policy of authorities to develop the sector. And as all statistical official data, they are open access to the public, which is not the case of other kind of database that I try to concentrate in this single slide. And it is just a starting point to put the context. About the statistical data collection, it is included in the EU-Algae initiative, where the Commission decided, starting in 2023, to prepare an overview of availability of algae-related data from various sources because of the awareness that there is a gap between the available data and the real situation of European industry when we look at production, number of people working in the sector, turnover, and other socioeconomic data, which are of course the basic to build the growth of the sector. So the official data collection has the aim to provide critical monitoring and evaluation of the impact of the various measures implemented by the European Commission and the member state in order to support the development of the sector. Then to deal with this topic, I believe is fundamental start with definition in order that there is a common field of interpretation what we are looking at. So since some years now, the algae concept is quite well defined officially, both by the Algae Standardization Committee and the EABA itself. So now everybody agrees that with the word algae, we include microalgae, to which belong also cyanobacteria such as spirulina, seaweed, and certain heterotrophic algae such as schizochytrin. Then algae are product from aquaculture. This is a definition coming from European regulation, which reads that aquaculture means rearing or cultivation of aquatic organisms using technique designed to increase production beyond the natural capacity of the environment. So aquaculture goes for algae in parallel with the fishery in lato sensu, because fishery includes also the harvesting of seaweed in the wild. Also, the meaning of aquatic organism is well defined because it covers any species living in water belonging to animalia, plant, including algae, and protista, including microalgae, and any part, gamete, seed, egg, or propagules, or their individual that might subsequently reproduce. So we have a common regulatory definition of aquatic organisms. Then there are also codes which are useful when for this product we go to data, which are coding such as the International Statistical Code to categorize economic activities. So any enterprise has its economic activity code, or more than one, because many companies has a primary activity and second activity, so they can have a different coding. And these are a key to collect data by statistical institution, but have only a bureaucratic value, whereas the custom code is not related to the activity of the company, is related to the products. And so algae are classified by custom, and this means that this codification is useful when it comes to consider, for instance, trade of algae products through the European borders. Then let me highlight that the nomenclature is still an open issue because we have international coding system by taxonomists, which is currently named Madrid Code, but it is not well spread in algae stakeholder, even the existence of the Madrid Code, which is the collection and of names and rules of all botanicals, including algae, and for statistical purposes, the FAO adopts the ASFIS code, which is used for mainly for fishery. It is a 3-digit code, which means that there are 17,000 of possible enters, and currently more than 13 are already occupied by fishery. So let me say industry has another vision because so far nomenclature in algae is still very, very complicated. And the proof is that recently EABA published 2 very interesting documents about the taxonomy.
This meeting is being recorded.
You can find also in the references. And if you go through this document, you will see what I mean when I say that taxonomy is still to be spread in industry or between producers. Now, again, it doesn't go ahead. Wow, sorry. And I don't know why. Sorry. Here. I believe that if you allow me to go this way, it is better because otherwise I lose your time. So going after given this definition, let me provide some landscape about the statistical data collection according European regulation. The regulation 223 of 2009 is the legal framework for all European statistics, which means that any economic operator has to provide data, as we know, and this goes over aquaculture. For the fishery and aquaculture sector, there is a more detailed regulation, which is the so-called DCF, which deals with management and use of data in fisheries and aquaculture sectors. And under this DCF, there is an implementing regulation, which is the CDR 2021-1167, giving detail of the annual European Union program for the collection data, namely which technology, which species, the number of companies, and things such this, which is going to be updated by the IFAS proposal, which is currently published under the Have Your Say, and we will see in the next slide. Then there is a regulation, the 762, which will be explained by the next speaker, Fabrizio, which deals with the rules under which national member states have to provide data to Eurostat. All this is covered by the aquaculture rules, which are the CMO, the Common Market Organization of Fishery and Aquaculture. And if you look there, you will see that algae are under the 1379 and the Common Fishery Policy, which calls for statistical data collection for aquaculture. About the IFAS, I strongly recommend to all stakeholders and category associations such as EABA, which sure will do that, to go to the website that you can find here and participate actively with comments and even criticism to this new proposal. It asks for quite detailing data provision, and it will be a big improvement because the issue of measurement units such as fresh weight, dry weight, but also the regional level of data collection. Region here means a geographical part of the European Union, which is smaller than the member state itself. So you will see that there are code and borders for this regional detail, the measurement units, and so on. Really go there and give a look to this, because the time that you put there is very profitable. Then I made an exercise looking at examples of data, algae data currently available in the public domain, coming from the different authorities, relevant authorities. First of all, of course, the FAO, which works at global level, and then for Europe, the Eurostat. And this will be described by the next speaker. The exercise that I made, if I have still a bit of time, please interrupt if I am too long. I collected the data from several sources, and the outcome is that with the key topic of production volume, so how much algae are produced in Europe in the same year, which is the last year where most data are available, the 2020, or the period from 2019 to 2021, we see that microalgae production is very close, reported as a bit higher than 300 tons dry weight per year, which is very, very low amount, whereas the seaweed is 300,000 tons, sorry, but remember that this figures is fresh weight. This is the reason why it is in italics. So to compare the second column in this table to the third, you have to consider that a typical conversion factor from fresh weight to dry weight could be 10%. So this means that the dry weight seaweed production is something in the range of 30,000 tons per year, which is higher than microalgae, but 10 times less of what could look. And remember also that the fact that it is fresh weight is not always explicitly reported in the data sources. So what we can say? We can say that the numbers are quite the same, but if we look why, we discover that this is because the only original source of data, whatever is the report referring to, is always the same, and it is FAO, which in turn takes the data from Eurostat. So the only available data are the official data. In conclusion, we have data gaps. We believe that the only reliable data collection is the official one. We believe that it is interest of the industry to cooperate to this data collection, and also to the regulation under which this data collection is performed, which means go to the have your say and participate. We know that the nomenclature issue needs a solution, is an open topic, same as LCA or many other topics covering the algae sector. And just to explain why it is relevant for industry, let's consider that also in the European Union reports, the microalgae production, we know it is 300 tons per year, but the microalgae market is 6,000 tons per year, which means 20 times more. And so to go for a reliable market, a transparent and fair market, is necessary that it is clear which is the production and which is the trade. About data confidentiality, the issue is that the regulation is written for aquaculture and fishery, and you can imagine the volume of fishery and aquaculture is by far greater than microalgae or even seaweed. So to provide data from a specific region in Europe about spirulina production or chlorella production means that the data of a single company should become published, and this could not be acceptable for the single company. The way out from this, because of course to mediate data is necessary that several companies provide the data in the same region. This holds for the volume production, and of course it holds even more for the economic value, because no company is available to put in the public domain its sensitive data about price and so on, of course. So the way out is to cooperate with Eurostat and find a common point of solution. Then, last but not least, let me highlight that there is a technology, fermentation, for algae production, which probably is the most important, or every way has a huge potential of development, but is still not clear that even heterotrophic microalgae belong to aquaculture. It is a fact. And this might imply that algae grown in fermenters could not appear in statistics. So these are just stone in the pond, or let me say, this is the beginning of a long roadmap that EABA will do its best to manage. Thank you very much for your attention, and sorry if I was too long.
No worries, Steve, it was super interesting, so I didn't dare to cut your presentation because they are interesting topics. And thank you very much for the nice overview of the data collection in general and all the references to the legislation. So now I'll leave the floor to our next speaker, Fabrizio Capoccioni from CREA. So welcome, Fabrizio, and I'll let you share the screen.
Okay, give me a moment, please. Okay. Can you see this, my presentation?
Yes, it works.
Perfect. So, good morning to everyone, and thank you for the invitation. The microalgae cultivation sector is certainly growing in our country, in Italy, as well as in the other part of Europe. And of course, in my presentation, I would give you a perspective from the related institutional activities that the ministry is carrying on about these sectors. This sector, of course, we are still at an early stage of process that for in other aquaculture sector are already well established. Anyhow, I'm a biologist and I work for CREA, the most important Italian research body dealing with agri-food topics. Since we operate under the direct supervision of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food Sovereignty and Forests, many of the activities carried out by my research team are aimed at providing technical and scientific support to the central administration, both at national and international level. For example, as you can see in the left side of the slide, we contributed to the drafting of the strategic national plan for aquaculture, which guides investments supported by the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. In addition, we are responsible for data collection and processing of production data from aquaculture activities that are then transmitted to Eurostat, FAO, Fishstat, GFCM, CPAM, and other international bodies. The process of data collection, processing, elaboration, and transmission of aquaculture production Italian data is the subject of this presentation today. And since 2017, the ministry has appointed CREA, my institute, with the task through a series of projects that over the years till now have allowed for a gradual refinement of the methodologies employed. We are currently finalizing the data collection for the year 2024. The data concerning the aquaculture sector come from a range of different sources, which have summarized here in these 4 points. The main source, of course, concerning production data, that are the ones requested by the European Regulation 762 of 2008. Another source concerning import and export data in Italy exists an official database managed by the ministry and developed by ISMEA, another research body specifically focused on economic issues and supervised, as I said, by the ministry. We also rely on close collaboration with producers, associations, and last but not least, there are other sources that we use for data related, for example, about market aspects such as prices, wholesaler prices or retailer prices on the main aquaculture products. But what data we are collecting? As I said before, the core of the aquaculture data collection concerns production data, such as the annual production, volume, and unit value, the annual input to capture-based aquaculture, the annual production of hatcheries and nurseries, the structure of the aquaculture sector that is due every 3 years. Italy, through the competent Ministry of Agricultural Policies, has adopted not to establish a sanctioning regime needed with a national legal obligation. But since 2014, the ministry has implemented a cooperative approach with all aquaculture enterprises, which has resulted in a data coverage of more than 95% of all companies in Italy. Accordingly, these may be considered de facto a census which is being carried out every year of the aquaculture sector. How does this census approach work? We have established a regional network of data surveyors who transmit data to CREA through a mobile and desktop app. Of course, my institute, my research group at CREA monitors data quality and the completeness of the data collected and transmit this data to the Italian ministry that is in charge for the official transmission to Eurostat before the 31st December of every year. Of course, there is an Eurostat check data quality and coherence. Going into the details of our methodological approach, CREA has developed an online platform for regional surveyors accessible both from mobile and desktop. This data digitalization reduce errors and allow to carry out a double check before the last submission to the ministry. This digital tools is able also to automatic analyze trends and first of all, to download the data as requested by not only by Eurostat template, but also for the FAO FISHTA template and the GFCM CMAN templates. This is important since many of the past errors were made during these copy and paste among the different templates. I will now show you a series of screenshots of the application we use. Please trust me on this, since the interface is in Italian, since the users are Italian. But anyhow, the data collection process starts with the company, and the surveyors can enter basic information such as the VAT number, the website, and the address. The mobile and desktop application allows users, so the surveyors, to search for and retrieve information not on all aquaculture enterprises registered mainly, but not only, under the ATEC or NACE code of aquaculture. But this aspect has been covered by Silvio before my presentation. Then it's possible to fill information about the production sites for every company. Of course, these sites can be more than one, and the information filled in this part are about the geographical coordinates or a picture of the satellite image of the site. After this, there is the part regarding the farm species records that contain the required data, such as the environment, freshwater or marine brackish water, or the farming method, the volumes, the value, and the farm size. This is for each species farmed in each farming site. What about the macroalgae? That is the main topic of this meeting. In 2022, thanks to a collaboration with ISAM, the main producers association in Italy, which had a clear picture of the initial situation, we give to Eurostat, FAO, and GFCM the first data about the total national production. Now, this year, CREA and the ministry prepared an online questionnaire to be circulated among all companies using the official email called PEC in Italy. This methodological step will align. The idea is to align the microalgae sector to the others for which the data collection is already in place and consolidated. So let's see in the next weeks, in the next months, how this new method will, if we give us more detailed and useful data about this growing sector. Thank you for your attention. This is my contacts and the contacts of my colleague Domitilla Pulcini that are dealing for CREA and the ministry for this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. It was super interesting to see how things work in Italy. As an Italian, I actually had no idea, so it was very interesting also for me. And I think there is something interesting to discuss during the question and answer about the questionnaire that you mentioned as well. So thank you again. And now we'll invite our next speaker that will give more microalgae perspective. So welcome, João Navarro, CEO of Nectun. So
hello, everybody.
the screen as well.
Let's see if this goes well. You see my screen?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It is something very important and very interesting what we are discussing here. So when I said yes to make the presentation, eventually to oblige me to be here and listen to you and learn something from you. Let me share a little bit about my view on this subject. Well, for those that don't know me, I'm João Navalho. I'm co-founder and president of the board of the company Necton. I'm also president of the board of company EU4Algae. I'm co-founder and vice president at Green Collab, which is the Portuguese collaborative laboratory for algal biotechnology. I'm co-founder and director at brough, which is the Portuguese Algae Producers Association, and I'm member of the industrial committee at EABA, and also co-founder the company. So, first of all, be aware, I'm not a data scientist, I'm not a data analyst, I'm not data engineer, neither data architect or machine learning specialist and statistical analysis. So those that was thinking that would be learning something from my presentation, forget about it. I know very little about data. I just deliver data to other people. So how can we help producers on gathering more data? We deal with microalgae, okay? We deal with microalgae in closed systems and in fermenters. For us, data is something that we have day by day. We work immersed in data. We got data for dozens of probes that we have in our equipment, for dozens of equipments. And well, since from the weather station that we have, and when I say we, all the companies are like this, okay? All the companies that deal with the microalgae production have this kind of capabilities. So everybody have a weather station that collect data for temperature, radiation, sun hours, rain, wind, that can be related with productivities, with other issues that happen in the production process. Everybody also have a SCADA system for process control. A SCADA system is just a system that integrates all the information that the equipment is giving to us. So nowadays we have all the probes, all the pumps, we have all the flow meters, we have everything connected into a system that help us to control what is happening in the production process, help us to figure out if there are some problems occurring in the production process, and of course that we register all of that data. We register all the data for pH, for temperature, for oxygen, and also for optical density in our cultures. And we do that for all the reactors. So we have tons of data. At Necton, we started well in the year 2000. So imagine we have more than 20 years of data there seated in, you know, in computers, or eventually, if you ask me for that, I don't know where the data are, but we have the data there, okay? And this data is very, very important. You know, when you need to do an LCA, when you need to do something related to the process, you need this kind of data that the companies have in their possession, okay? And we also, of course, as a company, we have a quality control system, and we register in that quality control system things like productivity, what we are producing, the density of the reactors. We also register the contaminations, the kind of organisms that appear, when they appear, at what conditions they appear, in order to have a track record and in order to learn a little bit from one contamination cycle to another. So the data is there. It is not so easy to get as the data from SCADA, but is there in the quality control system. We have Also that on the nutrient spent, on the water spent, and also on biochemical profile of what we are producing. So every one of the companies that is growing microalgae have a lot of data that they can spare. And for sure, and I'm talking for my company, for sure, if someone presents us a winning proposal, we can share the data with you or with who that do the proposal. When I talk about the winning proposal, it is something that don't give us trouble, something that we can do easily, unless if people ask for too much work, too much trouble. We need to produce algae and to sell algae and not to sell data or produce data. Anyway, if there are some opportunity to gather together some companies in order to share data, we are open to share the data that we have with us. And we share a lot of data also in other framework. It is in the EU research data sharing mechanism, and of course that most of you know about this and most of you collaborate on this data gathering, because in fact it is obligatory. When we get into a research project in the European Union framework, we put there a lot of data. Even when we do a proposal, we are sharing data about our people, about the social aspects of the companies. There are a lot of information there in the proposals. And then, of course, when you sign the grant agreement, you are obliged to share the data that you are getting in the project. You do it through Cordis, and the Commission publish the data automatically that we put there on the database. What projects share? Well, they share the metadata, the dates, even some software. They share the results of the project and also the data that led to that research. And the purpose of this is to give public visibility of the project, each one of the project details. Also we put the data in the repositories. There are a lot of repositories. All the researchers put data there. All the project teams put data there. We put the article, the report, the software, the prints. Well, almost all the data that we are gathering from the research, we deposit there. And the proposal, well, is like us at NECT, and we have the data there seated on the computers. This is just to have data for someone that want to use it, to treat it, and to get some conclusions out of it. Then we have the open air that aggregates all that information. This work a little bit like this. So we have the funding and tenders portal. Then the grant agreement that set the obligation for data sharing. That data is shared through Cordis and through the repositories. There are more than 2,000 repositories in the European Union. So it is big. This is a very big issue. And then the open air aggregates the data that is in Cordis and that is in the repositories and serve the data treated to public policy makers, into the industry, and also to the overall society. Well, I check in a EU4Algae database, and EU4Algae have there 219 algae-focused projects that happened between 14 and 23 across all the programs in the European Union. So I think that there are a lot of useful information that can be gathered out of the data that was shared by these projects, and that is a work that eventually is necessary to be done. Because, you know, as I told you, 2,000 repositories, it's too much. We are putting data eventually in too many places. If the information is repeated in a lot of places, there are a lot of people working on that. eventually too much. We are dealing this data issue with no strategy, and everybody start a new repository and with the new data or old data, and even we have a confederation of open access repositories, just for you to see the amounts of repositories that we have. They need to be aggregated in some kind of confederation. Eventually data is too much. I don't know. So just a few take-home words. I would like to let some time for the questions and answers. I think that the amount of data is not an issue. We share data. There are data all over the place, and data are accessible. We can reach to the data. You can check the databases and get the data. Though maybe we don't trust the data. Maybe the data are not harmonized. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's for sure. And when we check the data, we keep that feeling of okay, but is this true? What really I'm looking to, and we don't trust in the data that normally are presented. And of course, there is a lot of business making money, organizing all this data and presenting info, taking out of the public data that is available. So in my opinion, transforming data into useful information is now the key. It's a question, okay, we need to harmonize the data and then gather all the data and transform it in information. It is a very important step that to do. And even I think that there is an opportunity to create a working group in a financed framework in order to analyze all the available data, digest it, validate it, and present it to the stakeholders in a format that they understand. And that should include, of course, commercial and market data. And thank you very much. And I'm free to answer questions later on.
Thank you very much, João. I think Necton, being one of the biggest producer in Europe, it can be taken, of course, as a reference. And about the working group, I think I'll talk about that at the end, but it was a current idea to organize it. So
Good.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we will zoom out a little bit. So we will go back to the European landscape. We'll talk about seaweed and microalgae. And I will invite Alessandro Pititto to
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me here. My name is Alessandro Pititto from Italy. I work for Cogea, a consultancy based in Rome, and we work as contractors to the European Commission for supporting them in the management of a few key flagship initiatives. So just to clarify, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Commission. I'm just a lowly contractor. And today I'm going to be talking about two key initiatives of the Commission. One is the European Market Observatory of Fisheries and Aquaculture Products, acronym EUMOFA, and the other is EMODNet, the European Marine Observation and Data Network. And both initiatives do have data on seaweed and microalgae, though, and we're going to touch upon it during the presentation, with some strong limitations that I'm pretty much aware we all know about. So let's start with EUMOFA first. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to give you a live demonstration of what data is available on EUMOFA first. Right, so data on EUMOFA, I trust you can see my screen, otherwise please feel free to interrupt. Data on EUMOFA is available through a series of dashboards, or there is a bulk download section where you can just download the entire data sets. So let's start with this first sale in the fishery and aquaculture world is the stage of the supply chain where a product is sold for the first time. Like I always say, when an animal, in the case of a fish, ceases being an animal and becomes a product. And it's usually a B2B transaction that takes place in an auction, right? So this is our data set on first sales in Europe, and the source of this data are the member states themselves, under a sort of an obligation that is embedded in the common organization of the market for fisheries and aquaculture products. There's an article, I don't remember it by heart, sorry, where the European Commission has an obligation to provide market intelligence to the member states, and the member states have an obligation to provide the Commission with data. It's a sort of an obligation because it is indeed an obligation, but it is a soft one. There is no sanction associated to it. So basically all happens because there is a legal basis, but then there's a lot of voluntary cooperation, let's call it like that. So let's look at what's available. So for example, EUMOFA groups fish species within main commercial species. This is for the sake of readability mostly. So when it comes to algae, we do have a main commercial species. There is called seaweed and other algae, and you can select it. Then you can select countries. Let's focus on a specific here. Just pick one at random, basically. And then through these, you can see what data is available. For example, so you see a list of member states here. This is the main commercial species. Then you can expand it and you get access to the full name of the species. So in this case, we have North European kelp. This is less, we have a presentation and detail when available on presentation and preservation and size. And then the data you have, and this is true, I mean, basically for any other EUMOFA dataset, is value and volume by month as reported by a member state. So you can play with the filters above and, for example, decide to select on a specific member state, or you can choose another year, or I don't know, a specific place of sale, for example. So these are the places of sales in Europe, the auction markets mostly, and then you get this. Now, this looks pretty good. In fact, then when you see what the member states report is, we don't have that much. Now, let me clarify that at EUMOFA, we don't deal with the quality of the data reported, or we do it, but up to a certain extent. So we don't have any means to verify whether they report information correctly. And with this, please, I'm not suggesting they don't report information correctly, but just to say that what I receive is what ends up on EUMOFA, provided the data is delivered in the right format. So I don't have any other means to verify the accuracy of the information reported. And in terms of, so for the year 2023, for example, this is what I have, only 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 countries, because Norway is not a member state, reporting data. And these are the species, for example. So in Estonia, we have red forkweed. In Portugal, we have Lavernay. And in Spain, we have a bit more, in fact. The system also generates graphs that you can play with. I'm not gonna give you a detailed presentation on how the system works because it could take ages, but it's very user friendly. And the moment you change your parameters here, the data is updated in real time, and then you can also download it here. For example, you can create your custom extraction and then you can export it to CSV. And this is one dashboard we have. Then we have another one, which is on aquaculture. And this is data that comes from Eurostat. We basically don't do anything else with this data. The data from the dashboard before, you're not going to find it anywhere else than in EUMOFA, because it comes directly from the member states on a custom data flow. This comes from Eurostat. The same data you see on Eurostat, you're going to see it here. So you're very familiar with that, and well, it's the usual stuff. So perhaps no need to dwell on this. But again, this is yearly data, so we don't have a breakdown by month, and we have value and volume, and the system works pretty much the same. So you can select a country and a year, and then you have a custom extraction. You can download the data, and then you can also generate a graph. Then what is also very interesting to note, I would say, is another dashboard on import-export. Now, the import-export database on EUMOFA is one of the most complete database on fishery and aquaculture products worldwide. So you can, for example, focus on countries and flows. Okay, so let's look at what gets imported in the EU from basically non-EU countries. Okay, so I just selected the EU 27 and non-EU countries as partner countries. Let's focus on imports. We can also focus on exports. Let's pick a year. So again, I'll choose 2023. And then let's focus on what we're interested in. Okay, so again, you get here a breakdown of basically seaweed and other algae. So and now it's where it gets interesting. A very detailed overview. So you have Austria, you have Belgium, you have Bulgaria, all the member states, and then you have their partner countries. So from which country in the world they're importing things. So for example, you expand Canada, and then this is the name of the main commercial species. If you expand it, normally you would see a detailed list of products. But in the case of seaweed and other algae, the product is classified as such. So categorized as such. And it's seaweeds and other algae, fresh, chilled, frozen, or dried, whether or not ground fit for human consumption. It's ridiculously broad. It's not our fault. These codes here are codes that are agreed internationally. They're part of the CN8 nomenclature, and it's how products are registered when they go through customs. We receive this data directly from COMEXT, which is a division in Eurostat, and the data comes from EU customs. So whatever gets in and out the EU ends up here. But the problem is that when it's seaweed, when it's microalgae, when it's spirulina, it's all grouped under this ridiculously broad code. So the moment a product goes through the customs, then you basically lose any information on its nature. Aside from that, the data is quite complete, because then for every country in the EU member states and every partner country, you have detailed data on value and volume by month. This is year 2023, but if you expand it, you can have details by month. And just to give you an idea, I don't have to preach to the converted here, but if we pick a main commercial species that is related to the fishery world, then you're gonna get a lot more detail on products. For example, I just picked Alaska pollock here, and let me check if we can find something. Yes, only from China we have two different products here, which give you more detail. But the same is if you just expand on other countries. It's simply that okay, this is only seaweed. The list of products is really very long. You can have a look at it here. Sorry, let me just untick seaweed. Let me just focus on a few more products from the fishery world, and the details are a lot more. You can see how granular is the breakdown into specific products. If it's frozen, if it's a fillet, if it's I don't know, if it's dried, etc. With algae, everything gets grouped in a code that is so broad that you don't get to understand anything, basically. And this is pretty much what EU4Algae has. You can play with the data yourselves, you can download the data, and there's also extensive metadata to tell a bit about the context and where the data comes from. Then we have another operational service of the European Commission, which is EMODNet, the European Marine Observation and Data Network. It's an entirely different thing. This EMODNet basically maps marine data, reports marine data. It's a giant repository. To put it with Joao's words, is absolutely right. There are so many repositories. EMODNet aims to be the repository of all marine data repositories. I understand this may sound a bit ridiculous because probably every repository would like to establish themselves that way, but this is what EMODNet mandate is to become the entry point for all marine data. So it doesn't replace the other repositories, it just makes sense of the wealth of information, it harmonizes it, and it makes it available in a single portal, basically. And you can see that it's broken down in several data themes. So bathymetry, biology, chemistry, geology, human activities, physics, and seabed habitats. Each of these themes has a lot of data sets. I'm now going to focus on human activities because that's the thematic group I coordinate. And under EMODNet human activities, a few years ago, we started mapping macroalgae and microalgae and also spirulina producers in the European Union. So we have it here, and it's broken down in the three groups, so macroalgae, microalgae, and spirulina. So you have a list of establishment here, and when you click, you retrieve some information like, okay, country, if the position information is estimated or has been double checked with the producer, the organism group, the production method, other production details, the species when available. Okay, and this, you see the table repeated because in fact, if you zoom in, there are two establishments very close to each other. And the same goes for, of course, if you, for example, select microalgae. So you click here, and then you have the organism group, production method, and the species that are produced here. Now, this spirulina is the same, so I'm not going to show you. This was quite interesting a few years ago, but there is a big problem. This was built through a collaboration with the JRC. It was mainly the initiative of one person that many of you probably know, Rita Araujo. She used to work for the JRC, then she moved to another DG of the European Commission. Now, the thing is that since she left, there hasn't been any other person staffed to this. So this is, we gave it some updates, basically, of people who contacted us and told us, okay, we're not on your list, but there is no one in the JRC now working on it. We would be very keen to start working again on this, JRC or not JRC. This is not a problem in principle. But of course, to do this, we've got to do this with the industry. So one of my goals today, besides presenting the data, is maybe if we can initiate a discussion on how and exactly to resume this task and put it up to date and keep it updated, because this is quite important. And as you may see, we don't have any personal information here. We removed the name of the company. Yes, true, there are details on species farmed, not in this case, but it's voluntary. So if you don't want to give details, fine. Of course, we would prefer at least to know species farmed. And I remember before Rita left, one of our dreams would be also to have data on quantities produced. This, of course, would be great, but it also comes with several challenges, particularly in terms of confidentiality. I mean, giving out information on how much you're producing and what, even though your name is not here, of course, it's quite easy to trace who is who, basically. So that might be a bit of a long shot, but still, if we could just update this, fill the gaps, the companies that are not here, and the details on species, that would be also a great advancement. And that's it on my side. So I'm glad to be answering your questions if you have some afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. It's super interesting, and thanks for deciding to have like a live and tangible demonstration and to explain the differences and tasks divided from EU4 and EMONET. So thank you very much. I think it will be very useful later to discuss more during the question and answers session. So we have come to our last speaker. We have heard before from João the microalgae perspective, so we will do the same for macroalgae with Anne Ruddy, CEO of Red Rose.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm just about to share my screen. Excuse me, a bit of a Luddite here. So talk among yourselves for a moment. Right, here we go. Right, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I do feel like a minnow among all of these high-powered, highfalutin entities and individuals. I'm going to talk to you about macroalgae and my personal experience in working in the space. We're looking at the data collection of macroalgae and the challenges that I find from my experience. When we're looking at cultivated macroalgae, questions are, what are we measuring and why? We're looking at the species, obviously, and where we get the seed stock. We're looking at the methodology of the growing systems, how, why, what. We're looking at seed stock and where we access it, and environmental impacts, harvesting methods, natural wasting, and methods of processing, all of which is going to impact, and many of which are immensely variable. Species, for example, is clearly defined. We're buying seed stock, we know the species, we know that it's arriving to us as a farmer. But in my experience, those seed stocks are not always terribly reliable in terms of what volume metrics you can get out of a given meter line. We can't always guarantee that the seed stock is going to be practical, it's going to survive. The growing methods are variable, and the biomass that you can extract after growing is also variable. Now, I will contextualize that Red Rose trading as Alga. We are very small, we're a small entity. We're not looking at large-scale offshore commercial entities. Indeed, what we offer are systems to look at very small, turning fishermen into ocean farmers, and the scalability through replication, working with available licenses. So when we're looking at a methodology of growing, we're looking at long lines that are towable. And the seed stock will be dependent on what is natively growing and naturally growing in that region. We need to be aware of environmental impacts. And again, personal experience, when we tested our system, I'm here in the northwest coast of Ireland, exposed to southwesterlies, and we suffered 4 named storms in 7 days that battered our system, yet it survived, and we did get the volume output that we expected. But when you're measuring that volume output, that's where it becomes very interesting. Our harvesting method is that we will have because they're small systems on a long line, it will be a rib boat cutting the seaweed manually, transferring it to a boat, and then taking it to the shoreline. There is a lot of natural wastage. We've already lost through detritus an amount of the biomass. And the method of process is going to be one of the key factors here. The question is, why are we measuring? From the practical point of view, and I understand all of the variable reasons and methods and platforms available for measuring, but you have to get down to why. Now, from a straightforward commercial point of view, the reason I'm measuring it is to see how much I can sell, how much is actually going to be a commercial return. obviously, we do need to improve the ocean, and the metrics are going to be there. It's going to help us get and attract grants in my case. And the method for the towable system is to create societal job opportunities. The question is, how do we valorize this amazing resource? We have to measure it, and that's the most important thing, because in order to measure it, we can then attract industry to purchase at reasonable volumes at a reasonable price. We need to work back from how much we're actually getting out from that seed stock. So go back to the seeded line and how much you need to grow to make it pay for itself. I'm going to go back there just for a second. On the macroalgae, my personal experience was that my test line, which the fishermen calculated to be well over a ton in weight, having lifted it, and it wasn't scientific, and this is the weak link in this value chain, but they do understand weights, they do know weights. So when we harvested, brought back to the shoreline, this wet weight tonnage, by the time it was transported to where it was being processed, that wet weight, some 6 hours later, had depleted to 321 kg. Now it's still wet weight, but where do you measure it from? Are you weighing it from the point of view when it's harvested or from when it's to be processed? And that's a dramatic reduction. By the time it was dried, which it needed to be less than 10% moisture, it was going for the food sector, all I could sell commercially from my wet ton was 62 kg. So now it comes on to the commercial viability. I'm going to talk about the wild stock because that's a very much important part of the Irish seaweed economy. Over 90% of Irish seaweed stock comes from wild harvest. But the risk and the responsibility is how much wild harvest can we sensibly take that is going to be sustainable for the future. Demands are increasing, and with over 90% of Irish seaweed product coming from the wild harvest and demands increasing, we cannot keep taking without conscience. So we need to measure how much wild stock is coming out. But at what point do you measure it? And who is measuring it and why? The companies that are buying the wild stock are keen to measure it at its lowest point. So they're going to measure it from when it actually arrives at point of process. The ocean is already giving up however much it's being depleted. So I'm talking locally to my harvesters who I work with on a very close basis, and they have to produce 23 tons to justify bringing the truck out to collect the seaweed. But how much would they have had to cut to get to the 23 tons? That's why, well, the wild stock is so important that we measure at point of process. Now, one of the systems I've been working on for the past almost a decade is how we can process wet seaweed straight from the ocean and create value from that moisture. Again, it's another metric. It's something that I need to do to justify my investment and time to say, how can we create value from the moisture in liquid? And I'm pleased to say that the work that I've been doing has been validated by numerous universities. We're finding bioactives that haven't been recorded, and we're creating a commodity from the liquid that's found in the macroalgae of different species. And because the process works across a range of species, when we're looking at the wild harvest, we're not just looking at a single species for commercial application. We know from my harvesters that the seaweed is not always consistent. It doesn't always grow in the same place, in the same biomass, the same volume. So by having a system that can process just small amounts, sustainable amounts, but get a significant uplift in volume and commercial opportunities from the liquid, whilst also retaining the solid matter, which still has the hydrocolloids, it's got the minerals, it's got the nutrients, it has effectively that circularity in that we are creating value and a cascade value from all that was in the seaweed. And when it comes to the risks and responsibility, we're creating something that is a legacy for the future because it's fully sustainable. Right, so what we're looking at is seaweed extraction and wild harvest. We're looking at how we extract the moisture and that we get saleable, stabilized seaweed close to shore, albeit in small quantities, and they are small. Please, we are talking micro-processing units, but by having clusters of them, we're engaging with coastal regions, we're engaging with fishermen, bringing them into the seaweed economy. And this is on the macroalgae that we can then sell into a range of different applications. So that's pretty much me finished. If you want to reach out and contact me, please do. Ready to answer any questions. So I'll finish here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne, to add your perspective for Ireland and macroalgae. And I think you had a very important topic, a hot topic, who checks on the macroalgae that we harvest and what's the limit. And with this, I would like to thank all the 5 speakers of today. And I think if you have hold your questions for the moment, now it's the time. So I would organize it like maybe with the raise hand button, so we can organize it. You can drop your message in the chat, but I would prefer if you open your microphone. It's nicer to hear your voice as well.
Gonna be the first one?
Yeah, sure.
So I see that you can also see the face. Good. So thank you for all the presentation. I am Linos Vaskaridis from the European Commission, working with Maris Stolgis on algae. And in fact, I took over, in a way, the tasks related to data, hence my presence here today. So I missed the first 10 minutes because of a problem connection, but I don't think it's a problem for my question, because I don't think the answer is in the first 10 minutes. All the presentations were very interesting, very, I would say, detailed, very technical, very good. It would be wonderful if we in the European Commission could use this data, which is not the case today. So I listened to all of them. Okay, some of them much more technical than what I can follow, because I'm not a biologist and I'm not a person like Maris who knows in detail the subject of algae. So I took over mainly on the administrative side and the policy side. However, for example, the presentation about from Italy about how the data is collected, or from the other, what is the name, Alessandro, about the way EMOTNet and EUMOF are functioning. By the way, I also saw the limits of the statistics in these systems, which is exactly our problem. Anyway, I will not go into details about what I have seen. It's very interesting. However, as far as I know, or as far as I understand from all the meetings I had so far with the various colleagues and also stakeholders among you, this data, we cannot use it for statistics, for promoting our business, for promoting algae production in Europe, because of confidentiality reasons that were mentioned in some of the presentations. Okay, there is an exchange between Eurostat and FAO about some data. By the way, from FAO, apparently we can use it, although we cannot use it from Eurostat. Anyway, again, I don't want to enter into details. My problem and my question, by concluding this question, is that how can we use this data to promote your business on a European level? So whoever can answer, be my guest.
One of the speakers would like to start, and the others can complete afterwards if you prefer.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
It would be from a practitioner's point of view, capturing data is important for the purpose of commerciality. We've got to convince people that we can get the scale, we can get the volume. I think we need to focus on why people should report as much as the reporting itself. It sounds very cynical, but it is that what's in it for them proposal. And if we can actually create a justifiable and a real credible reason as to why it is in their interest. Because data is important, we all know that, but we actually need it to be at micro level, not the macro level.
Well, I can add something. Thank you, Linus, for your intervention. It was very nice. But you know, sometimes I feel afraid when you in the Commission say we want to help, we want to promote your algae, because then you promote not our algae but the Chinese algae, because we don't have a lot of chances to be in the market, you know. And what I know it is that I go in any supermarket in Europe, I see a lot of spirulina in every supermarket shelf, and then we cannot sell our spirulina because we cannot compete with them with price. There are other problems than this, you know. Even it was very interesting, Alexandro's presentation, and when he pointed out that the best part of the EMODET was the import data. And then the import data for algae, it is not there, because algae, when it is produced in Europe, it is aquaculture product. When it is imported, it's agriculture product. So we need to go to agriculture databases to find out our competition and the volumes that are being imported to the European Union. So we need to work closer. We need to work closer. Last time I was with Maris, I told him, well, it was a time before Maris was in this position, and now the things are much better. We are feeling much more support from the European Union. But I'm just saying that you need to talk more with us, and we need to talk more with you, because sometimes the problems that you think that we have are not the real problems that we have. And sometimes you put policies in place that in fact don't help us a lot, and eventually help our competitors in order to take us out of the market. And that was my 50 cents for your question.
Do you want to take over, Alessandro?
Yes, just to clarify something and then to add my perspective. The fact that I said that the code we have, which is the official one, by the way, is not enough to understand what comes in and out. And I still agree on that, also because I said that. But you don't have to go to an agricultural database to see algae, because we do have everything there is categorized under that product. Now, my problem, which is your problem as well, is that code doesn't mean anything, because it's called seaweed and other algae, dried, wet, frozen, whatever, powder. So basically, you have these amounts which are, formally speaking, perfectly correct. I mean, if something is imported or exported legally, it goes through customs, so you know exactly how much goes in and out, but you have no idea what it is. So we have quantity, for example, but quantity of what? I don't know the product, I don't know the species, I don't know if it's wet weight, dry weight, if it's powder, if it's whatever. To me, and I'm not the best person to answer Lina's questions, because I'm not from this industry. I would trust people from the industry here. But to me, the problem is that first of all, we should aim at having good data. And to have good data, we have two ways, basically. Either people self-report. Good luck with that. It may help. It may produce excellent data, but from probably a selection of producers, through associations, through network, etc. Or we do have, well-structured obligations that take due care of confidentiality, etc. I mean, why do we have excellent data on fisheries? Why we know everything about a fish that is produced in Europe? We know the name, we know where it was caught, we know the weight, we know the preservation, whatever, because there is a structural obligation that's been in place forever. Now, my feeling is that this industry has reached the limelight relatively recently. There is still no culture of how to structure data collection. It's there because it's there, but a lot more should be done. But at the legal level, I mean, because yes, everything that is bottom up is welcome, but it's never become comprehensive and exhaustive. We need something from top down in this case, just like any other industry, but this means revising very complex data collection systems, codes that sometimes are agreed internationally. It takes a very long time, and it takes someone who understands the problem and takes action. And it's not clear who should take action, because you talk to DG Mare, and of course they absolutely adamant, and they will do whatever it takes to promote the industry. Great. But then who's in charge of discussing codes, for example, classifications? Well, that's complicated. That's really, really complicated. So I think what's probably needed is a strong voice to push for having a proper data collection system that can take into account the sector. Because to me, seeing that imports and exports get under the same grouping, whatever, macroalgae, spirulina, microalgae, and you don't know anything about nothing.
Sorry, Alexandra, but I can tell you why. Because we are importing agriculture products. Because if we were importing aquaculture product, we would have much more information. It is much easier to put agriculture products in Europe than put aquaculture products in Europe. At least myself, when I export, I need to give all the information about what I'm exporting. Okay, so for sure, when they are exporting to European Union, they need to fill a lot of papers in order to give the information. So the information eventually is there. Nobody is gathering. And for me, and for sure, for us now, it is much more important to have that importation data real than our production data, because we need to talk with policymakers, and we need to show them what is happening with the dream of algae in Europe, and we are being, invaded by others products, and our industry, it's hardly can compete with them, and with time it will be harder and harder to survive and to stay here.
Can I comment on something, or does anybody else want to react? Because I would like to clarify some things, but maybe somebody else wants to react before I make my comment.
I don't see other raised hands, so I will just say if the speakers that have not intervened would like to, or I will leave you the word, Linus.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand, but I have a question. Should, for example, those who sell spirulina powder, should they show on the package what is the country of origin? Because now it's a problem that usually when there is spirulina, for example, somebody produced tablets in Finland, and then they are showing produced in Finland. And they are not saying that tablets are produced in Finland. People are thinking that, for example, spirulina is from Finland. So is it, if it's under agriculture, then it doesn't need to show the labels. But if it's aquaculture, then probably it should, the origin of where the material comes from. Can anybody comment this one?
Silvio, you want to go on?
Thank you, Ariane. Yes, I would like to answer first to Agnese, and then a comment that could be also part of the question from Linus. About the issue of origin of the biomass. To my understanding, the situation of is under the food labeling topic. And you was referring to tablets or a packet of spirulina. Currently, it is a matter of public or citizen education, because what is mandatory is both the packaging or last step of production has to be in the label. For instance, for spirulina, manufactured in Germany, and then in small characters in the bottom of the packet, if you look thoroughly, you find spirulina from non-EU agriculture. It should be non-EU aquaculture. Joao is perfectly right. But the point is that the declaration that that spirulina biomass comes from outside the European Union is already reported, being mandatory, is already reported in the label, but people don't read or people don't mind, because sometimes, not only for algae, but also for pasta, people is looking at the characteristic of the product, macaroni, and they don't mind to the characteristic of a wheat flour, which is used to produce that macaroni, because they look at the macaroni and at the cost per kg. So this is the point. Everywhere, I believe that a fair and transparent market is in the interest of European producers. And now I come to the point from Linus. Yes, a correct information is the way out, I believe. And it is also, let me say, the other way around, because as also Alessandro said, it is very, very complicated to change the UN custom codes. It is not an easy task to put more detail under the custom codes, but which is the way out in order to know what is entering in the European Union. But if we know that the full amount of algae, whatever the format, fresh, dry, spirulina, micro, seaweed, the total entering under the custom code of algae is 100. And we know that the production, which is very well detailed already, because we are communicating everything, maybe not from all European countries, but it is ongoing, then it is easy to compare the European production and the European trade. And then it is just to go to the conclusion, because the market and the citizens are always free to select the product that they want to purchase. So this is my comment to this.
Can I give a final comment, please? And then I will have to leave the meeting, but I just want to clarify my question to the position as DG Mare, and then I leave you the comments and the conclusions of the rest of the meeting, because in fact, I don't want to create a debate that shouldn't even be a debate here on this meeting. Since 2 years at least, maybe more. I mean, 2 years since I follow this file, but certainly more if I take my predecessors. We tried to see the ways that we could promote the algae business in Europe overall. The way the European institutions, generally speaking, are functioning is that in order to promote a strategy, a policy, a regulation, whatever, we have to prove to the hierarchy of the Commission, meaning on the higher level, that it is worth it and it is our benefit as Europeans to promote it. To do this, always, in all cases, no exception, we have to provide figures. The figures come from data. So if, now I'm not generalizing, if for some people, and here I'm speaking about some particular categories, you think that providing data will be a threat to your business, then there is no need for us to do anything. You consider that what we are doing is bad, so we stop, simply. No reason, we have no mandate to do it anyway, so we stop there. If you consider, however, that by providing some production figures by amounts, separating categories, so we can see this algae or this one should be promoted, because if we need this in Europe, we don't produce it. If you produce it on a scale-up basis or in an industrial level, we import 97% if the figures are correct. Don't take me wrong here, because this is what I have in memory of what we need. So if we want to increase our production, to pass on an industrial level and not stay on a more or less, let's say, I would not call it manufacturer level, but it's still a very small scale business in Europe. And if we want to do it in a sustainable way, not as it is happening in China, then maybe we have to take some data, some figures, and try to promote this business to scale it up, because this is what we understood that the business, even the very small businesses are asking. So this is what I'm asking. This is what I put on the table. Sorry, I cannot say much more, but that's the question, because everything you said in this presentation is wonderful. The data, the way you collect data, the differences, I learned a lot of technical information about the differences about dry algae, not dry. I mean, all these things is very interesting. I cannot use it. And how can I promote your business if I cannot use it? So that's my statement overall. Sorry, I have to leave. But I joined this meeting to understand how can we harmonize data and use it in Europe. And I did this meeting with only a comment that, in fact, we can do nothing, although we have the data. Sorry for that final comment. Maybe you can send me an email. You can find my email by, Ariana and Laura can send you my email if you want to ask more questions. I have to leave the meeting. But I wanted to leave on this final statement. If we can provide data so that we can help you, be our guest. And if it is harmonized, even better. If not, then we stop here and we cannot do something more. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for your presentations and for your attention and for the comments you provided. Sorry that I have to leave because I have another meeting. I'm already 5 minutes late. And if we want to do a discussion, you are welcome. And I will, with a lot of interest, read your comments. Thank you and have a nice afternoon.
I'll be in touch. Have a good day. Okay, so I think we close one big topic of discussion, and I don't see questions in the chat, so I will invite you to open the mic if you have some comments or reaction. Okay, so maybe I can ask a question myself, since, as I told you before, this work is going to continue for 2 years. Just to transfer something that has been discussed with Eurostat, we all know that this is a very long way and that we won't have an immediate impact. So they just put in the basis and they are very proactive. So as I said, they couldn't be here, but we have opened through EABA a good discussion with them to improve, especially on the harmonization. I understood that the confidentiality is something more tricky to address, but we will get there as well. And I would like to ask to the speakers if always taking outside the confidentiality, you should prioritize one step for improvement. What would be the first thing to do in your opinion?
I didn't understood the question, Adriana. Can you repeat?
Yeah, so to be more specific, as EABA, we are working on different topics about this algae data collection. So the harmonization, like among member states, for instance, Fabrizio mentioned before a questionnaire that has been put in place in Italy, which is maybe one way to go. There is the technical problems, the import-export data. So what do you think will be the priority in improving the way algae data collection is in Europe? What would you suggest? That's the question.
Well, as I told, the priority is in importation. It is the most important thing.
Okay.
We need to check what is happening. As I told, the market in Europe are full of algae, and everybody in the industry is complaining that they are not selling. So eventually, we need to check what is happening in order to talk with the policymakers. And to talk with the policymakers, we need to have the data, as Linus was telling. If we don't have the data, we are talking about opinions and not about what is happening. And of course, also it is important to harmonize the data that we are sharing, because if we are sharing the data in different ways, the data worth nothing, because we cannot compare the things, we cannot sum up the things, we cannot do nothing. And someone, I think it was you, told something very important. Even the dry waste, wet waste, we don't know what people are sharing, if it is dry or wet. And so that, well, that is impossible to do something with that data if we don't know if it is fresh or not fresh. Also, I think we need to look a little bit for other industries competition. It's not really competition, but we would need also to look for LCA for other things. We need to check carefully about how they are doing that for soy, how they are doing that for other kind of food that compete with us, because we have that data and we share it freely, and normally it is harder to find the bad things about the others. We show our bad things, we show the good things and the bad things, but it is very hard to find the bad things about the other, and we also would like to know, because that are arguments for us to talk with policymakers and even to talk to the market. So don't forget about the other guys, and it is all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, João. Alessandro?
Yes, I think there are a lot of things we or you can do as an association, and some things that you just cannot do. For example, I don't think it's possible to change the custom codes. That is very too complicated. It's going to take years before something happens, I guess. As an association, I think you could probably do a lot because there is objectively an absence of any structured data collection that is up to the task. I must also say, okay, Linus went away. I don't agree with this approach. I mean, if policymakers need data, they usually set up the proper data infrastructure. They don't rely for voluntary submission, because otherwise you get something that may be biased or whatever. So meanwhile, anyway, some bottom-up initiatives are possible. I showed an example. Okay, it's something different, maybe simpler. But what Rita did a few years ago, that was entirely voluntary with the industry, and we established a database of producers in Europe. Likewise, for example, through an association, it might be easy to get data on production with a sufficient level of detail, because it's true that it's confidential. But one thing is for a company, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, to provide their data and information to their association, and then the association aggregates the data and makes it impossible to trace back the original provider, so that we have aggregate figures. For example, this is the quantity of, I don't know, name a species that is produced in Portugal. Wow, that would be amazing. Probably not statistically accurate, but still a lot more than we have today. These are things that can be done and would probably also make the Commission happy. And likewise, and with that I conclude, last year in another project, the EU Blue Economy Observatory, we tried, and yes, I agree. Look at the example from CREA. For another project, the EU Blue Economy Observatory, we sent out a survey which tried to estimate the economic value of the sector. So in terms of turnover, value added, employment, etc. And it was voluntary. And of course, we committed not to disclose any information. We didn't ask for precise figures, but the uptake of the survey, even through your help, EU4Algae and IABA, was very low. I think we had 26 replies, so the data, we couldn't use it. Maybe if this goes in a proper way through an association, so that the data from the original provider doesn't go to the Commission, to a government, but to an association that aggregates it in a form that is acceptable, because nobody wants to know how much each company is producing. The Commission wants to know how much is being produced in Europe. So if we aggregate data by member states or by the European Union, that would be great. If an association could help and act as a filter between companies who have confidential information and then the public sector who you know what they may do, then it would be amazing, because we would still have something without damaging the interest of businesses.
Thank you, Alessandro. I'll just give the word to Fabrizio because he was first, and then I think Carlos would like to react as well.
Thank you. Completely agree with Alessandro. As I said, in Italy, we had the beginning, and we started from an association of producers, but now we would like to improve our data collection. But what I would like to highlight is that why is important also for producer. From my point of view, I'm a technician, so I stick to the regulation, but is the fund, the European fund that for aquaculture sector sustain very much the sector. If in Italy are the regions who uses this fund, if the regional administration and also the national administration doesn't know anything about the algae and microalgae production, this cannot be, of course, protagonist to guide the investments that region can put on the table for the activity, for the producer's activity. So the first things is to say, we are here, we are producing microalgae, even if the data that are given to the CREA and to the ministry is about almost 2 years before, since now we are collecting data of 2024. We are at the end of 2025. So there is, of course, a confidentiality, but the aggregation of data and the data itself are quite not so useful, I think. But anyhow, my input is for the producers and the Italian producers, of course. Pay attention that this data will be crucial to obtain by the region and the ministry attention for the funds that are not for finfish producers and mussel producers, but also for the needs of algae and microalgae producers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. And I'll leave the word to Carlos first and then to Anna.
Thank you, Arianna. There's two things that I wanted to point out. So I'm representing the European Algae Biomass Association here, but I also own a company producing microalgae in Spain, so I will give the both perspectives. So Alessandro, I think you're right. We need to gather more information from associations, and the associations should collect the data from the industries. I have to say that we tried in the past, but we were not very successful, neither on the participation nor on the reliability of the data. And that we have struggled a little bit with that. Maybe at the national level would be easier with national associations. We need to have in mind that not every country has a national association. And then we see a lot of gaps. I was just checking, for example, the UMOFA statistics just on production and especially on value. And I was checking just because I'm closely looking at Spain and Portugal. And I was looking until 2025, there was no data from Portugal. And Portugal produces a lot of algae. I was looking even at Spain on 2024, the production value was roughly 300,000 euros. We've been providing data, which is not there, I found out, and many other companies. We're the only registered microalgae production aquaculture company, which we used to report until last year, until 2 years ago, first sales, data and everything. And I think that the problem is that the governing bodies are not stretching everything in a single, organized, mandatory regulation that harmonizes everything. There has to be a ruling. And I think we need to look into the fisheries. And maybe it's a good, I mean, it's as close as we can get. At least it's agriculture, it's fisheries. Maybe it would be a good start point to structure a specific methodology, which we need to have every stakeholder taking part on this to to have the say of each of one, and try to collect reliable and enforceable, either with a fine or whatever, like when you answer to some statistics, so that we can start collecting truthful data. And when I say it from a company perspective, just the values that either us or, for example, Necton are not there, and on value can multiply by 10 on the value that it's already there in just one single company. So we're not showing to the investors, policymakers, and everything, the real size and impact, not just economic, but also social impact of what industry is bringing to Europe. And we need to highlight that. And maybe if it's not only with data now, because we don't have it, let's see how different associations and the Commission can gather all this together to show the real impact of algae in Europe. And our fears, the obstacles in market, imported algae, not with the right tariff code, and so on, like John Avallo pointed out. So I think we need to discuss this. We need to amplify this message to not just to the Commission, to the whole, to all the stakeholders. And maybe the EU4Algae platform could serve to use it as a speaker, right, to amplify this. So that was the two things that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. That's very interesting indeed to have your perspective of both sides. And I will let Anne conclude, and then I'll just have 2 remarks before we close.
Yes, certainly. I was just actually going to confirm and reiterate what's been said. It has to be almost a carrot and stick approach. For people to report, they need to have a motivation to report. What is it they're reporting on, and understanding the variables, but the why, what's in it for them? And from a small industry producer, what's in it for me is I've got clarity, I've got credibility, I can have something that might feed towards investments in the future and potentially for grants. So you do need both. You need both the carrot and the stick.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thanks again for everyone that contributed to this useful discussion. I'll just share my screen one last time to show you 2 events that will happen soon. So as I said before, the European Algae Awareness Summit will be soon in Berlin. We have still a few spots available, so you can send your application and we will reply soon if it's accepted or not, and if there are still places. And if you miss this opportunity, there will be another one in December. So just before Algae Europe happening in Riga, from the 9th to 12th December. The day before, we will have the EU4Algae annual meeting in person, and we'll be discussing the topic that we had today and also all the other projects milestone. And in the meanwhile, just stay in touch with the EU4Algae platform and reach me out if you want to contribute on this topic more. So I stop sharing the screen, and really thank you very much for staying with us and for all the speakers that fueled the discussion today. Thank you very much.